Welcome to Voices in the Wilderness, conversations about church and leader health. Thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to keep the conversation going. Voices in the Wilderness is brought to you by Preparing for Amazement Ministries, where we empower and equip churches and leaders to create lasting and transformational health. Visit amazed15.org to learn more. We also welcome any comments or suggestions. Simply email us at podcast@amazed15.org. My name is Marcus Carlson, and today our guest is Connor Boyer. Welcome, Connor.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. Excited to chat a little bit. We're going to record 2 episodes together, talking a little bit about church health. But before we kind of dive into some of that, maybe share a little bit about yourself and kind of your ministry context.
Yeah, sure. So I work at a Lutheran church in Michigan, and it's kind of interesting. I've been blessed to work at a church that I grew up in, so it's kind of my home church, which has provided a really unique ministry experience. I got into ministry pretty much right out of high school. I got on fire for the Lord and just wanted to do what I could. And so the church said we might as well get some money, some usefulness out of this guy, and hired me on and as an intern role. And I've just kind of stepped more into ministry from that over the years, mostly focus on youth ministry. And then now I'm a recently ordained pastor where I'm focusing more on family ministry as well. So, and as well as pursuing a master's in seminary. So, yeah, it's been a ride.
Yeah, and not a lot of people, end up, serving in the church they grew up in. So that's certainly a unique thing, and I'm sure probably some joys and challenges to that.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So, how have you kind of in your time in ministry, or even your time like in a church, how have you seen the importance of church health?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been, like a lot of people I've seen on your podcast, I've kind of have the opportunity to work in both on healthy context and healthy context, and so really what I've noticed the difference in being a church that's really focusing more on church health is I think we've gone from a church that's um, has really been more focused on transformation, and I think that's really the biggest difference I would see, and the biggest benefit I think from being a church that focuses on healthy organization.
And I mean, maybe like kind of give maybe if you're comfortable, where to what degree you're comfortable, kind of some examples of what you've seen, kind of the fruit of unhealth, in your time in churches, and the fruit of health.
Okay. Hang on, give me 1 second. Um, yeah, I think the one of the biggest areas where I see the fruit of unhealth is I think there's been a lot less anxiety being in a healthy context, and I think we've been a congregation now that I think is really prioritizing spiritual, emotional, and relational health, and I think you see people that before they're just showing up and now they're really growing. And the two areas I think I see that really is I think relationships are blossoming more in a healthy context. Then also I think people in the culture we're in now feel safer to be honest and are more willing to serve and are more strongly connected. I think that's a big thing for our church. Our church is connecting people to the living God, and connection has been something I think we've really grown in over the last number of years, working with you as our interim here at St. Michael, and focusing on being a healthy system.
Awesome. Other thoughts on kind of impact of focusing on health?
Yeah, from the leader perspective, I've really seen a huge shift. One of the big quotes that have kind of been ringing in my ears lately is that attitude reflects leadership. And so having, all of the leaders at our church really dive in and be serious about getting about being healthy leaders has really moved on to the congregation. I think we do conflict in a healthy way. I think the biggest habit I think our church has really shifted from the time that I've been here to really the last couple of years has been focusing more on people outside the church than inside the church. I think that's something that has really been a habit of ours as we've gotten healthier.
Yeah, that's always one of the two most controversial of the seven
Mhm,
habits. That one in adoption culture over assimilation culture, because I think
mhm,
certainly we get in the kind of consumeristic mindset, and probably historically, at this the church that you serve, and where I'm helping right now, it fell into that trap of kind of consumerism, and let's do as many programs and as many activities and as many like that, it's the my friend, it's probably been 20 plus years ago, my friend sent me a picture of a bumper sticker that said, Jesus is coming, look busy. Right. And so I think, part of this culture, at least in my opinion, could certainly weigh in on this, has been kind of that let's do a bunch of stuff to attract a bunch of people, and to kind of keep busy.
mhm. Yeah, and I think programming was so important, was such a focus for us for a long time without really effectiveness, and now I think, the intention is really focusing on the why and, why are we doing the things we're doing and what is it that we're, trying to do, and that's ultimately build the kingdom, and so I think, having programs is great as long as it's, there's an intention behind it, and I think that's another, kind of fruit of being a more healthy church.
Yeah, I mean, some kind of maybe, these weren't necessarily planned kind of questions, so kind of on the spot bonus questions. But I think what has been something that's been fun about this for you personally?
Oh, well, I think for me, I anytime I look back and see like, kind of where I was as compared to where I am now, that's fun because, I think um in ministry it's you're constantly focused on other people and serving, but like I think if you've seen the effect it's have on you, that this change has had on you personally, it's also easy to identify in other people, so that's been something that has been really fun, just kind of I guess seeing the fruit of the labor, that this really has been something that has not just been good for our church, but been good for I think me, and then also a lot of the people that I'm close with and work with at the church. It's had such a strong impact on them, um, relationally, and also um, not so. I think we're all for a long time very in a very anxious staff, and I don't think that's the case anymore. That's probably the best thing to see.
Yeah, that can be a big deal for sure. What's
Mhm.
been maybe messy or hard or bumpy about this process? I mean, we've kind of been working on church health for not, more than 2.5 years, and so obviously, we've talked about a lot of the good, but health is not easy or natural, and kind of takes intentionality. So, what's been a little messy or bumpy from your perspective, maybe as a whole, or just even for you personally?
Yeah, I think just avoiding falling into old habits, and I think that's, a natural thing that I think a lot of people here are aware of. But that's probably been, the biggest thing. Not everything goes as planned, right? There's not no one bats 1,000 with trying to become a healthy organization. So anytime something there's a bump in the road, I think just avoiding falling into those old habits and staying with those healthy habits has probably the biggest area of focus.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I remember when I was working with a church in Texas, and they found old habits, and I got really kind of frustrated and said, maybe this isn't working. And I remember the president of the board said, Marcus, this is a muscle memory problem, right?
Mhm,
And so I think there is certainly a muscle memory issue, and that's been a helpful phrase for me to think about too, is kind of the muscle memory that again, when we get anxious, it's easy to slip into old habits, and that's why we talk
mhm.
about habits, because I think that's kind of what really shapes us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it's been good chatting with you about this, and appreciate your time. and we're going to continue this conversation in a second episode. But thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.